One thing I've noticed is we throw around certain words like consciousness quite loosely. I mean, I do this regularly and I haven't really thought that much about what it is that I'm referring to, but I just know that people know roughly what it is I'm trying to talk about. And a lot of the time when you speak about consciousness, like people will try and define that as, oh, okay, you're just talking about your brain, like working as it should. And other people were like, no, I see that more as something separate from consciousness. When you use the word consciousness, what are you actually referring to?
Well, I think it's simultaneously this big mystery, but also it's completely obvious to all of us too. So it's something that doesn't need a background in science or philosophy or anything. Consciousness is any kind of experience. It's what you lose when you go under general anesthesia. So I don't know, Tyson, if you've ever had general anesthesia.
I have.
Uh, and it's not
Yeah.
just going to sleep, right? I mean, you are gone and then you're back and the ends join up. There's no sense of time passing. You're just not there. Yet you are there as a physical object and you're still alive, one hopes. But you are not there as a subjective entity. You are just gone. Sleeping is different, right? You can be asleep, but you're typically, you have dreams, there's other kinds of stuff going on in your mind. And when you wake up, you know that some amount of time has passed. Anesthesia is different. So consciousness is really the opposite of general anesthesia. It's not, and then it's not, we have to also, I think, be careful not to define it purely by reference to what it's like to be a human being. When we are conscious, there's many aspects. We experience being a self. We have stream of thoughts. We have memories. We have a particular range of emotions and so on. And that may be how consciousness is for a typical adult human being. But consciousness in general, I think, is best defined by a philosopher, Thomas Nagel, who says that for a conscious organism, there is something it is like to be that organism. That's very simple. It just feels like something to be me. Feels like something to be a bat. That was his famous paper. But for a table or a chair, there is nothing it is like to be that thing. They're objects. Even for a computer, it's a complicated object. But unless you believe your computer is having experiences, and some people do, of course, now that we've got AI, there is nothing it is like to be your computer. It is an object, does stuff, but that's it.
Yeah. So when you go under a general anesthetic, I mean, this might be me being a little bit thick, but are we saying consciousness is temporarily switched off? Or like, what is the difference? Because I fully relate to what you're saying. Like when I wake up in the morning, I'm fully aware of the fact I've slept through the night. Like simple things might give it away, like the fact that it was dark and now it's light. But there is a sense of time passed. Whereas I had a couple of sinus surgeries years ago now, and I was very nervous for the first one. And going under, I remember, well, first of all, I remember like when the anesthetic kicked in, how relaxed I was. And I was like, oh, I've been so scared of this for the last couple of weeks, and that fear's just disappeared at the moment I'm about to go under. But then the speed at which you feel you woke up, it almost felt instant. And yet, um, it's a very different experience. Like, can you talk more to that? Because that is a really interesting comparison.
Yeah, I think it's for me. I've had general anesthesia now. I think three times, maybe four. I think three times, and the last time that I had it was a relatively minor surgery. So I was sort of paying attention to the experience of losing consciousness and then regaining it. And it's very powerful thing to go through. I hesitate to call it an experience to go through because that's the whole point. It's the absence of experience that's the notable thing. Um, no, you're absolutely right. Consciousness is temporarily turned off and reversibly. I mean that's would not be much good if it was only working in one direction. And I mean, other things go on typically in an operating theatre. It's not only that consciousness is turned off, also you have muscle relaxants and paralytic agents and so on, so that when the surgery is going on, your body is still. But the fundamental point about anesthesia is that it abolishes consciousness, and it seems to do so in a way that is very different from sleep. And yeah, we've talked about how this seems to be the case when we just reflect on the two things happening to us. But it's also the case if you look inside the brain, if you look at brain activity of someone who is asleep and someone who is under, and I want to emphasize really profound general anesthesia, because you can have light general anesthesia, which is sort of more like sedation, and then you can see some similarities. But if someone's under really profound general anesthesia, which is not uncommon in surgeries, then the brain enters a state which you never see in sleep. It's more similar to conditions like coma or the vegetative state, which of course the anesthesiologist typically won't say because it's not a very reassuring thing to say. It's much nicer to say you'll sleep for a while and then you'll wake up and be fine. But it's technically not true. There's a kind of brain activity called burst pause where you see these bursts of brain activity, and then there's these gaps where it's basically pretty much silent, and then there's another burst of activity. This you don't see in sleep, but you do see it in general anesthesia, and it's become a really fascinating research area about, okay, so what is happening in the brain under anesthesia, and why do anesthetics disrupt consciousness in ways that going to sleep just doesn't? And we still don't really know. There's some cool ideas out there.